Welcome to Loaded and Rolling. I'm your host, Thomas Wasson. And for those living under a rock, we've recently had a lot of changes this year. New administration, new regulations, new things that I have to pay attention to because every 4 years, of course, we may shake up the box or continue to keep the box at the same way. But one of the big topics that we're going to talk about today is autonomous trucking and autonomous vehicles, something that if you've been keeping abreast of the situation, there's been a lot of changes, especially in the development of the technology. The autonomous systems are getting a lot better, but now we're also waiting to see what the regulatory side is going to be. And so we're going to be talking with the folks from Plus today. I've had a great experience talking with them in the past. They've got some amazing software, and they recently made some news by bringing on Earl Adams. He's the Vice President of Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs at Plus. We'll be talking with him today about not only some of his experiences, but get some of his thoughts and Plus's thoughts as we are starting 2025. So Earl, pleasure to have you on. Great getting to talk to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Hey, Thomas, thank you so much. Happy New Year. It is really great to be with you today. And, this has been an amazing year for me. Particularly, I left the administration actually back in December 2023, where I was the deputy administrator at the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and before that was the chief counsel. It took a little bit of a stop at a global law firm called Hogan Lovells, where I was working in the transportation regulatory space, but then now have made my way to Plus, and really excited about helping to lead this great team of folks as we, as you said, navigate the regulatory world around autonomy. One of the great things that makes me, well, I'm really happy about being at Plus is that I worked with them while I was at FMCSA. One of my roles was overseeing the team that was attempting to develop the first set of guardrails for a federal framework for self-driving commercial vehicles. And so now to be with a great team here at Plus as we're looking at what the next 4 years are going to offer in the autonomy space. Like I said, really excited to be a part of it, and frankly excited for the industry given the new administration.
And I mean, there's been a lot of fun changes. Let's talk a little bit about some of your experiences at the FMCSA and law before starting at Plus, because I think a lot of folks, autonomous has been slowly chugging along, slowly improving it. But on the regulatory side, what was kind of some of the behind the scenes with the technology? Because one thing that, at least from my understanding, was it almost felt as if let's wait and see as this stuff develops, but not too heavy-handed as in we're going to start immediately issuing rules and regulations until it's kind of developed to a certain point.
Thomas, you're not too far off there. If you think back to 10 years ago, autonomy has always been 2 years, for deployment, and I think in that spirit, the rulemaking process is it's intentionally slow. It's very intentional. And so I think that there was a rightfully concern about, not moving too fast. For a technology that is innovative, and we know it's going to continue to innovate, you don't want to jump out too soon and then have whatever you did become obsolete. And so at FMCSA, during my time there, frankly, leveraging and leaping off from where the first Trump administration left off with its vision statements around AV, so AV 1 and 2, we sort of took the same view, like, hey, this is going to, it's going to take time. It's, we've got to be nimble. But at the same time, and this is, I think, goes to your question, what was going on behind the scenes was this realization that this is real. This is happening. So in the sense that if 10 years ago it was every 2 years, it's, 2 years away. Well, we were now in a place where on any given day, there are hundreds of miles of testing being done with L4 capabilities on public roadways. And so in that spirit, not to hamper the innovation, but frankly, just to make sure that we established that there were just guardrails from a safety standpoint, there was a lot of discussion around how do we just make this at a threshold, at a sort of a preliminary level, as safe as possible while this testing is occurring, while these loads are being moved. That was the most important thing, and that's what we were trying to accomplish at FMCSA while I was there.
And one of the big things I'm hearing about, a lot of buzz from other autonomous companies as well, is that there's big plans for this year, 2025. Some are announcing some want to do commercialization in 2027. I know the 2-year thing we just brought up, but what do you think kind of makes this different? Because it does feel like we have a brand new slate. We have a new administration. And so given your regulatory experiences, what are some of your early thoughts as we are just now getting our foot in the door for a second Trump administration compared to the outgoing, previous Biden one?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that this is an exciting time. Jokingly saying it was 2 years away, every 2 years. I think we're now here. When I look at what Plus is doing, we have a plan towards 2027 commercial rollout where we will have trucks coming off of the line through our partnerships with our global OEMs, the Traton Group, Iveco, and Hyundai. But with Traton Group, by 2027, we will have trucks coming off the line, and that is a reality, which I think that several years back was not as likely. But now, in that spirit of these global partnerships, OEMs are realizing that they need to find great partners. Plus is one of only 3 that has these types of OEM partnerships. We're at an inflection point, and I think that there's really it's a very exciting opportunity in the AV space. On the regulatory side, I think we're all very cautiously optimistic. I believe that the Trump administration is going to pick up where they left off, where they were leaning forward, and in creating a regulatory environment which was supportive and frankly encouraging of AV tech deployment happening. And so I don't think that I don't see anything that's going to necessarily prevent that from happening. If you look at Secretary Designee Duffy's confirmation hearing, it was very much about autonomy, and he seemed very interested in in making sure that there is a framework for this technology to be deployed in a safe and effective way, while also addressing a lot of the the benefits, for the economic benefits and the sustainability benefits that will come from autonomy. So to your question, very excited about the next 2 years. I think that Plus is in a great place as a result of the relationships that we have with our OEM partners, Traton, Iveco, and Hyundai, and that 2027 commercialization date is real, and I think that we're going to be ready to see that happen. And I'm excited about what that is going to mean to the sector in general.
And I mean, 2 years is very fast by federal government rules, given the rulemaking review, the comment period, all this stuff. If I want to, from how I've seen other launches, you have a trailing vehicle. Let's say that I want to get my level 4 going. I want to do the driverless one. Is there anything right now, any big questions I need to answer in order for me to reach that? Is there any kind of gaps that we're missing, or is the current regulatory stuff in place that I could just kind of roll it out without having to really overcome any hurdles?
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons why it's so important that we have a federal framework. Right now, it's the guidelines or the regulations that are guiding the industry are on a state base, individual states. So we're doing testing right now with Traton Group's brand International in Texas. And Texas has leaned in on creating a very supportive environment for AV testing. And so a company like ours, we are still doing our testing with a driver in, but on closed roads, we're going to be moving towards driverless testing in our L4. And that is I think that's the natural progression. You have other companies that are announcing that they're going to go driver out, perhaps as early as this year on public roads. And, Texas, they are working with as we are, with Texas state and local officials in order to do that in a way that complies with Texas's rules. But yeah, we are now at this place where I think, as I said, this inflection point where L4 driverless, driver out runs are going to be a reality, and plus is we're going to be continuing to partner with our OEM partners in order to do it in a very safe and systematic way. But yeah, very soon, I think that all of the ADS operators will likely be trying to conduct some type of driver out demos, and more likely than not in states like Texas, Arizona, which have very much sort of established that they want to be leaders within the AV space.
So we kind of have a cool opportunity because I did some reporting earlier. One of the companies that wanted to do driver out in 25, they had problems with cones. Who would have thought the FMCSA and little cones that you need to put at the side of the road, and that versus having a reflective a flasher or blinker, having something. And so now the FMCSA is like, wait a minute, I need to go check on the cone status. So currently, I guess that's where the big scramble. It's almost like going to the brave new world, because if you can get the states to make the right framework through the testing, then you can also try to lobby the government to have favorable regulations. Is that kind of what's on your wish list this year? New Congress, some new senators, new folks to the FMCSA. Like, what are you kind of looking at now as you're trying to hit the ground running? Because it looks like if one state does really well, maybe I can just tell the congressman or the FMCSA, hey, let's do it like Texas, or let's do it like California.
Yeah, no. So those provisions, those few provisions within the FMCSRs, which require a human driver, I mean, those have to be dealt with. FMCSA, recently, as denied a petition from Aurora, with respect to their warning triangle solution. I think that is my wish list is that FMCSA will revisit that. And will sort of identify, as the regulations allow, if there are provisions that within the proposal that don't work, rather than an outright denial, that they would put conditions in order to help ensure that there is a gradual phase-in of the technology, if that's what they believe is going to achieve an equivalent level of safety. And that's what the regulations require anytime that you seek to for an exemption or a waiver of the regulations. So, number one on my wish list is that the agency will, take a look again at that petition and, hopefully identify what they believe are conditions to make it safe and will approve it. I think that there's also a need, and I'm actually, again, cautiously optimistic about this, that Congress may engage in some form of legislative action. There are a lot of members of Congress that are very knowledgeable around autonomy, both on the passenger side as well as on the commercial vehicle side. And so I would not be surprised if there's some type of legislative action that occurs. And then I think the president, through just the executive power, has the ability to, in the bully pulpit, to really establish a sort of an atmosphere or a playing field, which makes it clear that that there is that this administration supports the safety benefits, the economic benefits, and the sustainability benefits that can come from autonomy, and that will sort of serve as a jump-off point for whether it's on the state level, additional regulations that can help clarify when driver out operations can occur, on up to, as you said, to the federal government level, where you may be able to see NHTSA begin to earnestly look into establishing some standards, or on the purely on the operation side, FMCSA, being willing to just establish that clear statement that driver out technology, L4 technology, is permissible under the FMCSRs when done with these conditions.
So it's almost like, because that's what I noticed in the research, the FMCSA themselves had mentioned in the denial that, well, we haven't really, as I interpret this, we haven't really looked at it before. We tried to get the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, then we also have the Federal Highway Administration, and we have the FMCSA. So is it kind of like, not dueling banjos, but if you want to get everyone to kind of move forward, especially on an autonomous truck, you got to deal with the highway people, the standards people, the regulatory government people, and then we all have to come together to then decide on this overarching theme, right? It's almost like wrangling departments.
No, without a doubt. At DOT, we call them our sister agencies. There's sometimes a little sibling rivalry that happens, but ultimately, you're correct. All of the agencies, the modes within DOT, have to be aligned and moving in the same direction in order to ensure that there is, a clarity within the regulatory framework, because that lack of clarity, I think, is represents one of the threats, if you will, from a regulatory standpoint to this industry, where you have one agency operating, going faster than the other. Everyone needs to kind of be working at the same level. And so, in the end, NHTSA sets standards around the operation of both commercial and passenger vehicles. That process requires a great deal of data and testing. I think that the AV STEP program and other efforts by NHTSA in the last administration to just kind of get as much data as they can from related to the operations, I think that's a good first step. I think FMCSA, without question, has to engage on the operational side. And like I said, I hope that they will revisit the petition and then let that serve as a jump off point for other actions. And then Federal Highway, ultimately, frankly, has the money. And, they're the ones that if we can get them to begin to look at, from an engineering standpoint, the way that roads are developed, the way that they deploy their grant dollars in order to help encourage additional demos, that would be, that's what's going to be necessary. So, yeah, it is that all of them sort of driving in the same direction at the same speed, which is going to be so important.
And haggling. And I wanted to look at the legislative aspect, because you did mention earlier that if you have a bully pulpit, if you have congressional legislative support, is that something where, like, if I'm Plus or I'm a AV firm, I'm targeting, I want to make sure I want to get some good regulations passed. Do you kind of spread out your strategy among the DOT and the sister agencies, or do you try to put it and think that maybe if I can pass legislation that may speed up the agencies, or are the agencies just kind of like, well, you got to get with Congress and then they can give me more power to speed this up? Is there a specific way to a gas pedal, so to speak?
I think that the legislative path does represent a bit of a sort of an accelerator, in part because the agencies right now all believe and understand that they have the authority to promulgate rules for autonomy. The issue is just the rulemaking process. It just takes a long time. And so if Congress gets involved, well, what they can do is they can begin to set deadlines. They can set a timeline. The agency must do this within this time frame. And I think that there's nothing better when you're working towards a deadline as opposed to when you don't have one. So yeah, I think that the legislative path can be fruitful. At the same time, if the president makes it clear that this is a priority, that will move the agency in the exact same way. So I don't think that it's either or. I think it's and. The industry will benefit from direct action, whether it's from the executive, from the White House, or from Capitol Hill. But the bottom line is that there needs to be some motion and some movement. And like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic that whether it comes from the legislative branch or the executive, that we're in a good position now.
Well, let's talk about public acceptance. I feel like I'm part of the public so I've been here coming up on 4 years now, since 21. Alan Adler, amazing writer, has been doing the truck tech beat for a while. I've just recently taken it over. So large fleets and autonomous, it's suddenly become something where it's in both of my wheelhouses now. Let's talk about acceptance. The first one is, you did mention a lot of the OEMs. It feels like acceptance on the OEMs, a lot of testing, a lot of deals, bringing in the hardware. For trucking fleets and operators, what's kind of the vibe right now, so to speak, in acceptance? I know there's a few trial runs with various ones, but do you think this is something that's more upstream first, or do you think eventually downstream at the operator level we may start to see some big moves?
Well, I think that you're definitely right that the OEMs have identified that this is an area that they want to develop and focus in. Our three OEM partners are definitely demonstrating and leaning forward in that respect. But the reality is that if they didn't think that their customers were interested, it would not matter. So I think that even downstream, there is definitely interest in seeing how autonomy can help with the driver shortage, which exists, and looking at the hardest part of the trucking experience, and that's over the road. That group of truckers is not growing, it's not expanding, and so if autonomy can help, be one part of the solution as to how we resolve that, I think that's the reason why you're seeing downstream, shippers that are interested in understanding how autonomy can help them in their business. It is definitely going to be, I think, with all innovation, sometimes it can be top down, but ultimately, these are business decisions that, that shippers are making. And I think that it's clear that whether it's from a driver shortage standpoint or even from a safety standpoint, there are benefits that can come from autonomy. And so I think in that spirit, that's why we're seeing this move for both adoption on the OEM side, and as well as awareness and acceptance moving towards adoption on the fleet operator side.
Do you think there's an angle to say this is based on a conversation that maybe the autonomous trucks are going to be safer than the autonomous cars? I talked to a buddy who said, well, if you think of the terms of Tesla, they're really obsessed with cameras. But then I was talking with another autonomous maker, and they said, one thing we really like the fact is we have cameras, LiDARs, radars. We have multiple redundancies in case of fail points. And that's one of the reasons why the generative AI is such a big deal, is we can finally get all this processing power and start consuming it. Is there the potential that that could be an issue as well? Because I know there's a driver shortage. In my opinion, there's a shortage of very safe drivers, which we see with the nuclear verdicts and stuff. Is there any kind of angles on that, and compared to like a standard car that's zipping around with just one type of cheaper technology?
Yeah, well, I'll be honest. My area of expertise is not is not on the passenger side as much. But I will. But you did hit on it. It is about redundancies. It is about being able to have as wide of a field of vision as possible. Being able to to see down the road as far as possible, so that the system can identify and anticipate and to react in a time that can be done in a safe manner. I think that when you look at the various use cases, each of them has their own challenges that they're going to have to overcome. And on the passenger side, without question, I think that the technology is going to have to improve as to how, from a driver assist and then ultimately to an L4, as to the field of vision that those vehicles and the technology that you can put on top of the passenger car, so that it can have as wide of a field of vision as possible. On the commercial vehicle side, because these trucks are so big, and as we know, I used to say all the time at FMCSA, I mean, these are 70 mile per hour bullets that are going down the highway. It is so important that the technology, have as many built-in redundancies as possible. And in that spirit, I think that's why when I look at the two use cases and moving towards pure commercialization and deployment, I do think that the commercial vehicle use case is perhaps the most viable today. And I think it is, again, the reason why you see OEMs like Traton and Iveco that are investing, in time and in partnerships, Hyundai as well, because they know that this is, from a use case standpoint, this one here probably makes the most sense from an economic standpoint, as well as from a safety and a we haven't even talked about sustainability. I mean, the cost savings that come from, that very measured ongoing travel time, just from gas alone is beneficial. So I think those three benefits are probably clearer in the commercial vehicle space than the passenger side. And that's why, I think the commercial use case is moving, is kind of moving at a faster clip.
We're going to have to do a whole other segment on the sustainability one, because, there's definitely a lot. There's a point of pride, optimization in fleets and stuff, especially with the idling and, taking your break. One last question. Got a little bit of time left. If you had your Christmas list, I know Christmas has already passed, but with the new administration, is there anything that folks should be aware of, or any immediate goals or regulations you want to get brought up or put on people's radar that would really help towards the next steps, which is, that path to commercialization?
Yeah, I think that, as I said, the number one is FMCSA needs to take a look at, hopefully revisit the petition that Aurora put in regarding warning triangles. All of the regulations that require a human driver need to be reviewed and identified with how can we ensure an equivalent level of safety using technology, leveraging technology, innovation. That's what needs to occur. And I think that will be, if we're having that conversation, I think that we're moving in the right direction. The second thing, and this kind of actually relates back even to the adoption piece of it, and that's from the public. I would love to for public adoption of this technology. I would love to see FMCSA DOT using its bully pulpit, its soft regulatory authority to help increase the education and awareness around autonomy and around autonomous commercial vehicles, to talk about the safety that can come from their use, because that really, the public's acceptance of commercial autonomous vehicles is truly the threat, the existential threat for the industry. And so I think that through education and exposure, so regular touch points, and then leveraging the evaluation or the testing and the data that the industry has, I think that will go a long way in helping to move towards public adoption. And if DOT were to use, Secretary Duffy and others were to use their leverage in order to increase that awareness, I think that would be really beneficial, and it would be a great year for the autonomous vehicle industry.
Perfect. Earl, thanks so much for coming on the show. A lot of great information as well. We'll definitely have to have you on again to talk about as the developments continue on. If folks want to learn more about Plus or get in contact with you, learn what y'all are working on, what's the best way to find out?
They can go to www.plusai, or can reach me always at earl.adams@plusai. Appreciate your time. Tom said, hey, wish you the very best this year.
Thank you, sir. You too. That's going to be a wrap for this segment. If you're just catching us, we are on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, sign up for the Loaded and Rolling newsletter and the Truck Tech one. I'm double dipping today. Check it all out. A lot of great developments. That's it for this episode, but join us next time. We'll see you soon.